I'm worried about my other mother. I don't normally talk to anyone about her, considering what people used to call me and everything I went through growing up, but I'm seriously concerned tonight. I've been told you guys believe in the supernatural and might actually be able to legitimately help me. So, I'm hoping either one of you has your own version of my other mother and knows what I can do, or maybe, I don't know. I guess I should just start at the beginning, huh? I grew up in a relatively boring town out on the edge of the suburbs with tons of land in between each home. We weren't rich by any means. It just wasn't a particularly exciting place to live, so everything was pretty cheap. About 100 yards or so behind our backyard, we had a stone well right on the edge of a forest where I occasionally explored and found pretty leaves to stick in books. But otherwise, there wasn't much to do for a little kid. I grew up and lived there most of my life. And as early as I can remember, I've always seen my other mother in my room whenever the sun wasn't in the sky. I call her my other mother because she'd watch over me in the darkest of nights, standing by the door or window, even the closet at times, or at the foot of my bed. I grew up with her, so I figured everyone had one. Obviously, by this point, I know that isn't true. It might be best to describe her to you as a sort of guardian angel, though she looked nothing like the ones in books or the kind they described at church. She looked old and damp. She wore rags darkened with soot and grime, like each day she returned to some hidden swamp beyond the forest to live with the frogs and mud. Her slender frame stood tall and calm, and unless she moved, you could honestly mistake her for a wax sculpture, she was so silent and still. When she moved, it was with graceful purpose, a sort of predetermined dance she had practiced for ages. Her footprints and long dark hair would leave small puddles that would quickly dry up, like it had been liquid mist all along. There were a few times I even spotted some moss growing on her back and shells in her hair. Her face was stern and oddly shaped, and yet despite all this, I never felt threatened by her. I knew she was a kind spirit. I could feel it even before she spoke to me. Anytime I was frightened or upset at night, anytime there was a sound or shadow, she would smile a crooked grin and whisper lovingly to me, "I am here," and I knew I was safe from the monsters in the dark. In hindsight, I should never have told anyone about her, considering she didn't exactly look too benevolent. But like I said earlier, I'd grown up with her every day and figured everyone had one. It wasn't until one night when my dad came into my room to tuck me in when I discovered I was the only one who could see her. Of course, like any paranoid parent, mine went nuts and carried me off to all sorts of doctors. Fortunately, I passed every evaluation they threw at me, and none of them dared risk put a child on medication when my visions weren't harmful. My parents argued, but made no headway and eventually stopped trying. I learned quickly it was best to pretend my other mother was an imaginary friend. Obviously, she was far more than that. I was 14 when he came. There had been rumors around school that there was a prison break the next county over, and everyone was worried about break-ins or worse. The local police started more routine patrols in the cul-de-sacs closer to town, but because we were further out, they didn't drop by all that often. I don't blame them for what happened anymore, but I was asleep when I heard the window break. It was somewhat muffled, but unmistakably out of place. The house was old and creaked when it settled, but this was far different. I sat up on my bed, scanning the dark room and just barely able to make out my other mother standing by the door, holding an open palm towards me as though to say, "Stay silent, stay still." Soon after, I saw light coming from beneath my door, and I heard the footsteps of my father coming down the hall. My mother whispered something to him I couldn't quite make out, but before long, it all happened so fast. If it weren't for my other mother, I would have screamed out in fear. I heard yelling, followed by thuds that came with a moist crunching, a louder thud, my mom screaming, footsteps, more crunches. I swear, my heartbeat was essentially vibrating. But all the while my other mother waited patiently by my door, occasionally whispering to me, "I am here." For the longest moment, silence pierced through the night, only ever paused briefly by a rustling here and there. Eventually, the noises stopped, and I felt as though I could finally breathe. But it wasn't over yet. He hadn't left. Soon enough, whoever was in the house got up and began heading toward my room. The footsteps crept ever closer, slowly, as I swallowed as much fear as I could. Another step, another, like it was a metronome for some kind of sick orchestral piece. The light at the bottom of my door faded, and through the silence of the night, I could hear his hand gingerly rest upon the doorknob. It turned ever so quietly, ever so patiently, as I waited in bed, frozen. I glanced to my other mother, hoping she would tell me to run, but she hadn't moved so much as an inch in what seemed like forever. "Stay silent, stay still, I am here." The man opened my door with a sickening calmness, shedding light upon the contents of my room, including me. His eyes were all I remember seeing. Crazed, inhuman eyes filled with an unnatural sense of pleasure. Like killing got him higher than any drug ever could, and he focused on me, sitting there in my bed, completely helpless to defend myself. Somehow, I knew at that moment he wanted to take his time with me. He wanted to dissect me, slowly, carefully, as I screamed out for someone, anyone to help me. Why had my other mother told me to stay? Thinking back now, I can't remember where she had gone when he opened the door. It was as though, in my frightened distraction, she had completely vanished. As the man inched closer to my frail, shaking frame, he raised a knife, gleaming in the soft light with my parents' blood. He held it as though it was only an extension of his own arm, a piece of him he was born with. And as I tried to turn away and raise my arm in defense, I found myself overcome by an incredible sense of relief, like an extremely amplified sense of the kind of protection you feel when you pull the covers over your head. I watched as he raised the knife to his own throat, slicing cleanly across the flesh and sending warm liquid across my sheets, choking as his eyes turned from bloodlust to primal fear. My other mother separated from him moments later, as though a spirit trapped within his body. Blood spurting from his neck, the man fell to his knees, gripping his wound before falling to the floor dead. Still in shock, I watched her smile at me. "I am here." I eventually composed myself enough to call the police, who were apparently already on their way. I tried giving them my version of what had happened, but they chalked my other mother up to childish delusion, like it had been caused by the stress of the events. The official report says the guy killed himself in order to cause a traumatic memory for me, in some crazy hope to get me to follow in his footsteps. But I know what really happened. My other mother had possessed him, for me, to save me. I bounced around homes after that, but my other mother followed me wherever I went. Every night, she'd stand by the closet or a window, watching over me and whispering her favorite phrase. I had more psych evaluations, but they all concluded she was more of a benefit than anything else. Like my mind was creating a benevolent spirit in response to the trauma. Of course, I know better. And like the rest of my life, she's not why I'm worried tonight. I'm worried because, for the first day in my life, the sun has gone down, and she hasn't shown up yet. And I swear, there's something rustling in my closet.